when we talk about going to the toilet, we take it for granted. But across the length and the breadth of our country, there are many who face enormous challenges. And as we have heard, even death when they have to go to a toilet. We are here to ask you to be part of a bold social initiative to ensure that every school in our country has safe and appropriate sanitation facilities. This is an initiative that will save lives, but it will also restore dignity to tens of thousands of our nation's children, as our Constitution demands. The Sanitation Appropriate for Education, or SAFE as we call it, initiative will spare generations of young South Africans the indignity, the discomfort, as well as the danger of using pit latrines and other unsafe facilities in our schools. Schools should really be places where children have fun, where children get educated, where children can have a sense that they are safe, where they are supported, where they are nurtured, and where they are also empowered. Schools should be centers for building communities and for strengthening partnerships between a caring government, of the people, and for the people themselves. This SAFE initiative reaches beyond the bricks and the mortar of water and sanitation. It is an initiative that in many ways touches the young souls of our nation. It seeks to contribute to building a cohesive society in which schools are the heartbeat of wholesome communities. We are gathered here to respond to an urgent human need. There are nearly 4,000 schools across the country that only have pit latrines or other inappropriate sanitation facilities. These are the schools that serve the children of the poor in our country. It was in such a school, Mahlodumela Primary School in Limpopo, where 5-year-old Michael Komape drowned in a pit toilet in 2014. It was also in such a school, Luna Junior Primary School in the Eastern Cape, where Lumka Mkhetwa lost her life in March this year. And it was this that really touched the sensitive nerve or chord of our nation, and where we felt that we needed to do something immediately and urgently. It is a pity that this type of initiative was sparked off by the tragedy of young people dying, but it is better not to have left it like that and do nothing. Today, we are doing something about it. The utterly tragic and devastating deaths of children so young and so innocent remind us of the human consequences of service delivery that is deferred, service delivery that is derailed, service delivery that is delayed, and also service delivery that is denied to our people. They remind us that we must focus all our attention not on what we have achieved, but on what we have not achieved. We have achieved a great deal. The time has now come for us to move beyond focusing on, yes, lauding ourselves with praises on what we have achieved. We must now zero into what we have not done and make sure that we implement our plans and we pay attention to that which we are supposed to do. We have heard the cries of anguished families. We have felt the outrage of a society that cannot bear to witness to another needless death of a young person, the future of our nation. It is our responsibility as government, but it is also our responsibility as business, as civil society, yes, as parents, as teachers, and indeed as communities, to act with purpose, but also to inject urgency and unity in that purpose. Through the SAFE initiative, we can all help to restore the dignity of learners in mostly rural and township schools by providing age-appropriate sanitation facilities. Just as it takes a village to raise a child, so too does it take an entire society to educate a child. With today's launch, we are calling on all South Africans. We're calling on the corporates in our country, NGOs, and international partners to be part of this ambitious but also necessary effort to give effect to the fundamental human rights of our learners. In doing so, we will also be contributing to the improvement of our education system. We cannot expose our learners and educators to an environment that is not conducive to teaching and learning and still expect excellent education outcomes. We will also be contributing to the broader goal of decent sanitation for all our people. As we heard earlier from our colleague Ndadeli Sufi, who said that schools are centers not only of education, but they are community centers as well. Our funerals are held in schools, our weddings are held in schools, our community meetings are held in schools. So schools have become the epicenter of community collaboration, community communion, community acting together. So it is in these schools where we need, yes, to give life and meaning to our call for decent education for all our people. The United Nations Development Programme estimates that globally there are more than 2.4 billion people who do not have access to basic sanitation like toilets and latrines. Through the Sustainable Development Goals, global leaders have agreed that by 2030, we must have achieved access to adequate and equitable sanitation and hygiene for all. Aware of this the importance of adequate sanitation in preventing diseases and ensuring economic and social benefits, South Africa is committed to attaining the targets of sanitation for all by 2030. We've made significant progress in this regard. The percentage of households in our country with access to improved sanitation increased from 62% in 2002 to 80% in 2015. In the public school system, since the advent of democracy, over 11,000 schools have been provided with flush toilets linked to either a municipal connection or a septic tank. In instances where reticulated water connections are not available, government has provided appropriate alternative sanitation technologies in a further 9,600 public schools. However, despite this progress, we are painfully aware that we have not done enough, and we are not moving nearly as fast as we need to. In our quest to ensure universal access to safe and dignified sanitation, we need to employ the sanitation solutions of tomorrow and not yesterday. And this is where technology comes to our aid. Current models of sanitation are expensive. They require large-scale networked infrastructure, and they have a high energy budget and use much more water than we have. This is why the Water Research Commission has partnered with local and international organizations to realize a new approach to sanitation. The new toilet systems are localized. Usually they work off-grid, potentially energy producing, and use minimal water in many instances. These are not low technology solutions. Instead, they use the benefit of the best science in the world to achieve high-tech, low-maintenance, and value-adding solutions. So this SAFE initiative could be a catalyst for a new revolution in sanitation in our country. It could also demonstrate that these new systems can be effectively implemented at scale. By finding innovative solutions to a challenging problem, we will not only be able to make our schools safer and the lives of our learners better, but we will be opening new possibilities for environmentally sustainable sanitation. This has broader and social as well as economic implications, because it will encourage the deployment of new sanitation technology in public and other facilities, and also potentially establish an industry in South Africa for the development and production of such systems. It is in this regard that we call upon the private sector to become an integral part of this effort to realize the basic human rights of our children and to secure their future. There are several ways in which all of us can get involved, and particularly the private sector. Firstly, it can be through contributions to the SAFE initiative. Companies can support the construction of models of new technology toilets as a core component of the plan of each school. Secondly, companies can adopt a group of schools as model schools for joint sanitation, water, energy, off-grid solutions. And thirdly, companies can be part of building a South African base for the industrialization of these new technologies for local as well as for global markets. In whatever way we each choose to assist, there is an urgent need to collectively develop infrastructure that will bring dignity to those who lack safe and adequate sanitation and thereby improve public health. We seek sustainable and affordable solutions that have community support. And we also seek partners that will not rest until every school and every learner has decent, safe, and appropriate sanitation. It is in this regard that we call upon all stakeholders to help build a social compact that is greater than the sum of its parts, which harnesses the resources and capabilities of each social partner to achieve our common goals. It is also in this regard that we say, let us build this social compact that essentially recognizes our shared responsibility to build a new society that is founded on the principles of justice, respect, dignity, and equality. We are called upon to act in solidarity with the children of our country. And solidarity is a concept that is raging throughout the world like wildfire, because it is now realized that no one partner can do anything on their own. And it is also realized that those who are in greatest need are people that we need to support and assist at all costs. And allow me, in conclusion, to extend my appreciation to those organizations that have joined government in launching this initiative. UNICEF, the United Nations, is here in its mighty form. So UNICEF is here, the Nelson Mandela Foundation, and the National Education Collaboration Trust, But we also want to thank those corporates who have already demonstrated that they want to be part of this initiative to help and to act in solidarity. There are quite a number of corporates, and some of them are enlisted around here. The minister told me that already, by your presence here, we already have signed up a number of pledges, and the pledges that have been signed up will go towards constructing safe toilets to about 1,000 schools already here this morning. This is real good action. My objective and the minister's objective, obviously, is to go beyond this 1,000. Yes, her name was Lumka Mkethwa, and she was 5 years old. And today, we are launching this initiative in memory of Lumka Mkethwa, and indeed of all other young people who died needlessly in our toilets. And through this initiative, where we're acting with our various partners, we hope to wipe out these abhorrible latrines from the face of our country. And it can be done, and it starts today. We will do it. Your involvement gives us confidence that however great the challenge, however dire the need, it is indeed by working together that we will succeed. This, colleagues, friends, countrymen and women, is something that we must do. This is an obligation that all of us must take on for the sake of our children, for the sake of the memory of Lumka Mkethwa, and for the sake of all the young children who died in our schools, and for the sake of the future of our country, we must do this. I thank you for your participation this morning.
And that, of course, President Cyril Ramaphosa, and he was speaking there at the launch of the Sanitation Appropriate for Education initiative, also known as SAFE.
Yeah, good to see the president acknowledging those young girls standing around the room with the placards and acknowledging the names of those that have died because of these pit latrines. So I'm glad that he did actually acknowledge it. So let's take a break here on the...
Why are you appealing the norms and standards judgment? When you know that there's a sanitation crisis, why are you appealing this judgment?
Democracy.
Please explain.
Democracy.
And to MEC Schaefer, why are you appealing this judgment? Why are you appealing the norms and standards judgment?
Okay.
When you recognize there's a sanitation crisis in schools. MEC.
When the president leaves, okay. Can I also ask the table that was seated here present, because they had requested one-to-one photos with the president in the holding room. So, but before I release him, let me just acknowledge and thank the president. But I know you have to go and chair the meeting. So maybe let's just get seated, then we can release the president formally. Mr. Mayor, otherwise we're going to be expelled from Tshwane. I apologize for not acknowledging you properly. So let me acknowledge the mayor properly. But Mr. President, let me thank you very much for the initiative and say here we have team education, we're moving, also have a full table of our heads of department and can give an assurance that indeed we had the instructions, we've reprioritized our programs. As we said earlier, for instance, Northern Cape had to move forward some of the programs and delay some of the programs to make sure that we can meet the deadline. Western Cape and Gauteng, despite the pressures that they have because of in-migration, they've also done so. And our biggest challenge, as we demonstrated, KZN has the highest number of pit latrines, followed by the Eastern Cape and Limpopo, and we're working very hard with the partners here. But I really want to take this opportunity to thank all our partners that are here. We have our usual partners or partners in crime. We have, Bob said, that did not only commit, so as part of celebrating their 100 years centenary, because they were founded in 1918, have pledged 10 schools, 1 school per province, to the value of more than 500 million. And when you too much them, then they said, the board said again to say we can up and just also focus on sanitations. And all the partners here we have, as I say, Unilever, also we have our young people in Zika, which are also giving us consultancy work. The UNICEF also, which has been very instrumental and helpful in bringing international partners. We have Anglo, but I can't list all the partners, but I really want to express our most sincere gratitude and can make a commitment that indeed, President, your instructions were heard. They came late in the evening after the death of Lumko and say, get going, and I can say the team has been moving, and thank you very much, Mr. President. As we release it, because as we have indicated that the President has a cabinet committee meetings to chair, we will release you, we will, okay. You want to say something? Yeah, okay. Can the President come? In the meantime, as when he's ready to leave, the baritone singer must be ready to sing, to serenade him out of the place. Thank you.
No, what I want to say is, you know, when in February we spoke about Tumamina, send me, we actually received a barrage of proposals from a number of South Africans who said, President, do send us. And now those were just broad statements. And I'm standing here because I want to say to those companies who have responded positively, and those who are still going to respond positively, and those institutions that are also going to respond, we want to thank you for being TUMAD, because this is Tumamina in action. Now, this is real Tumamina in action. You know, when people want to insult me, they always said, yeah, that's Tumamina, that's Tumamina. Now, I want you to know that you can now say Tumamina is working. This is real working together and being TUMAD. Thank you very much for being sent. Thank you.
So we've agreed with the program director that I will walk the President out to this table here, and then we can continue the program. So, this is one of our Gauteng winners.
Iswa inhlokomo ngajingu samtholo sengathi izulu libiki mihlolo nakhuselisa ngamawala selisa ngokudlondlobala kuyathatha ngokusobala luyeza lukhulu ngabe kwenze njani ngabe kwenze njani tshelani mina ngitshela belungu ngabe kwenze njani tshelani mina ngitshela belungu ngabe kwenze njani izingane zithwele izinkalo ziphethe izingwembe ezinemibhalo zihamba ziyahlabelela ziphakamisa izibhakela naba bantu bayabukela kushube kakhulu ngabe kwenze njani ngabe kwenze njani tshelani mina ngitshela belungu ngabe kwenze njani tshelani mina ngitshela belungu ngabe kwenze njani naba kwasihlohlo ehlome bezingofolo azisakwazi kudlula kwasengathi kuyathula nakho futhi sezidula nansi nganonwisamu ngabe kwenze njani ngabe kwenze njani tshelani mina ngitshela belungu ngabe kwenze njani ukhalumaye maye ngubani engingezwa ngaye tshelani mina ngitshela belungu
Mr. Givzamani, ladies and gentlemen, from the Nomedi High School. Let's hear it one more time for him. And ladies and gentlemen, please rise as we acknowledge the President's exit. Thank you, His Excellency. And we shall wait for the President to exit. All right, you may be seated, ladies and gentlemen. We're now going to continue with our program. Before we take the pledges, ladies and gentlemen, it is time for the pledges. I was speaking to Mr. Khosa on Sunday, and he did assure the rest of the public that some companies couldn't wait, actually, to start pledging. They'd already been pledging before even today. So later on today, we're going to ask the Honorable Deputy Minister of Basic Education, the Honorable Mr. Enver Surti, to come and acknowledge those pledges. But before that, we want to hear some messages of support from our partners. Let me call now Mr. Herve Ludovic Delays from the United Nations Children's Fund on stage, please.
His Excellency the President of the Republic of South Africa, the Honorable Minister of Basic Education, the United Nations Resident Coordinator and representative of the United Nations Secretary General for South Africa, Mr. Gavin Raja, National Ambassador of UNICEF South Africa, Mr. Godwin Kosa, CEO of the National Education Collaboration Trust, representative of the corporate sector, non-governmental organizations, the media, and civil society at large. A very good morning to you all. President Ramaphosa, during the discussion with the Executive Director of UNICEF just 3 months ago here in Pretoria, reminded us of the commitment to giving the children of South Africa a healthy and happy start to their lives. And it is truly an honor for the United Nations and UNICEF to be here with you all today at this defining moment for the children of the country. In this seminal year, when we commemorate the birth centenary of Nelson Mandela and Albertina Sisulu, we should also reflect on the numerous achievements that the government and people of South Africa can be proud of. Indeed, ladies and gentlemen, the statistics are very clear. The country has one of the highest levels of public investment in education at nearly 6% of the GDP. And South Africa is projected to be the first country on the African continent to achieve SDG 4, namely ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. 9 million children are fed at school daily. And the number of schools with lack of unsuitable sanitation has dropped from a high of 12,000 to less than 4,000. Ladies and gentlemen, the government of South Africa has prioritized the rights of children to education, and indeed these sanitation initiatives adds to the many efforts to improve the enabling environment for quality learning. The United Nations at large and UNICEF, through its global lead on water and sanitation, support the government of South Africa fully in this effort toward meeting SDG 6, clean water and sanitation for all. And our modest pledge today is to help achieve this critical commitment by offering advanced yet practical technical advice to accelerate this initiative forward at both local and national levels. In doing so, we remind ourselves and our corporate and civil society partners present in this room today that their support to the government is a key accelerator to deliver safe, quality, and sustainable sanitation for children, a key feature to ensure that children grow, learn, and thrive to become active members of society today and tomorrow. As my time in South Africa draws to a close, and this is one of my last official functions as UNICEF, I reflect on the past 5 years in South Africa and conclude that after having worked throughout our continent for over 3 decades, it has been both heartening and affirming to work in a country with such a complex past, dynamic present, and yes, a hopeful and bright future. His Excellency, the President, Honorable Minister, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for this opportunity to join all stakeholders in this endeavor to brighten the journey of the child in South Africa. And let us commit today to work tirelessly until every child is safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DeLace of the United Nations Children's Fund. Let's hear it one more time, ladies and gentlemen. All right, and of course you do know the Nelson Mandela Children's Fund, and of course the Nelson Mandela Foundation rather plays a very pivotal role into today's gathering. And I'm going to call upon Mr. Silo Hatang there, he's looking at me, to come also and give us that message of support. Mr. Hatang, please join us on stage.
Acting Premier Ntatele Sufi, Mayor Motsekga, Deputy Minister Surti, Mayor Msimanga, Ministers, MECs, mayors, business leaders here present, the opera singers in our school choir. I must tell you guys, I don't know if you agree with me, I've never seen people so relaxed giving keys that are so complex. I kept on, there was the Miss Bengu, the little Miss Bengu who gave that tiki-tiki thing. I kept on thinking, if I could run the Nelson Mandela Foundation that relaxed, I'll really be one of the most best leaders around. Good morning. Good morning. I think it's important that we say it's a good morning because all of us are going to pledge to make a difference. Unless if you are here grumbling about being here. 4 years ago, a young Michael Komape fell into a fetid pit toilet, choked, and he died. His image and his story fundamentally altered the way in which the Nelson Mandela Foundation has done its work since. Our focus has been to put Michael Komape, and who was followed by Lumka Mkethwa, and what they represent at the center of everything we do. Michael's and Lumka's stories are about dignity. We have become too accustomed to turning a blind eye to the indignity of those around us, to pit latrines, to toilets not being cleaned, to stunted children, to children who can't read. I recently had the opportunity to climb Mount Kilimanjaro with my 10-year-old son, Retsegofaditswe Hatang. I must say I'm glad that he made it to the top of the mountain. But on day 3 of climbing this mountain, he came to me and said, "Dad, I would like to make number 2. So I said, well, yeah, there's a toilet there. He says, yeah, can you please come with me, which I went with him. And as I opened the door, he looked at a hole on the ground. So he wasn't sure, where's the toilet? So he looked at me with those innocent eyes of a child looking at a father to say, intervene here, I'm confused. So I said, there's the toilet. So he looks at me again to say, how do I do this business? So I just said, without giving a demo, I just showed him that he has to squat, which he did. This was the fastest dump I've ever seen in my life. It took him almost exactly 15 seconds to do the business that he would usually do over minutes. He was really scared, and he then, as soon as he was done, we walk out, and he said to me, aren't these the toilets where 2 children died? And I then had to confirm, yes, it is the similar kind of toilets. But I must tell you, those are just a hole in the ground this small, so he wouldn't have fallen in it. He might have damaged himself had his foot fallen in. As a father, I could not imagine the indignity I would feel if my son's daily reality was having to use a pit latrine on a daily basis. And I cannot even imagine the pain I would feel if my son got hurt or was fatally injured as a result of using a pit latrine. I think I can speak for all of us as parents in the room that we would die a few times over if we were to lose a child in that way. These pit latrines are not safe, but are more for mountaineers who do it as a choice. In Madiba's centenary and Masisulu's centenary, we must center the dignity of the poor and the most marginalized, the forgotten. It is why we are in the Equality Court today, in fact, in Ntatele Sufi, fighting the to have the apartheid flag declared hate speech. That flag represents the genesis of the indignity of millions of South Africans who had to live with it. Our fight now is to work on giving South Africans the dignity they deserve. Our focus here today should be on 3 C's I propose: compassion, collaboration, and corruption. In 2002, at the United Nations, Madiba said, and I quote, "We are at a crucial conjuncture in mobilizing the collective energies of humankind towards working together for a more humane, compassionate, and just world. And a crucial measure of our compassion will be the manner in which we work for a better life and secure future for our children," close quote. We believe that with young children being a mostly silent, invisible constituency, it is our responsibility to undertake actions on their behalf which are to their benefit. We must display our compassion to this silent constituency, to those who do not deliver votes or tax. Our compassion towards them signals a future we want to build. And as my colleague once said, with the sole aim of not poisoning the future. To achieve the more humane, compassionate, and just world that Madiba spoke about, we need to consider the role of the private sector, the NGO sector, and other sectors in collaborative efforts. Madiba is well known for seeing an injustice and picking up the phone and calling on people to help in addressing that injustice. And Tate Mohale recently complained about my calls. I'm sorry to tell you, Tate Mohale, that they are not going to end. For as long as there's pit latrines, I'll keep calling you to say, let's do it. However, we must note that our role will be to hold the state accountable, as the state cannot be replaced, and the state must always embrace the responsibility of taking the lead in providing for the needs of our people. Finally, we must be aware of the spectre of corruption. Our hope is that this process is transparent and free of corruption. And if this is able to be a process in which is transparent rather than efficient, it can serve as a model for how other challenges in society are addressed. I think we have to pause here and say, those vultures are not here, I hope, at the moment. They're waiting outside. As soon as the tender processes are done, the minister will get the call. I'm ready to deliver the toilet. We have seen corruption work. When we raised funds for drought relief efforts to the tune of 62 million rand one morning at the Nelson Mandela Foundation, Minister, we were charged around 80,000 rand for building boreholes and wells, whilst the government was paying anything between 1 to 2 million rand per borehole. I ask you, is this right? When the city press broke the story a week later, it caused waves just for a day. All of us were horrified for a day. We are normalizing the abnormal. We can't have a situation where we pay 80,000 to the same company and government pays 2 million. It can't be right. So I think we should then be pausing at this moment to say, with this project, it will never happen, Minister. Under your watch, we will make sure that it won't happen, that happens with this kind of project. For the new dawn to deliver dignity to its people, we can't expect taxpayers to shoulder the cost of the vampires in our country who thrive on corruption. We'll support this effort despite the difficulties ahead, and there will be many ahead. At his State of the Nation address, Madiba once said, and I quote, "Our definition of freedom of the individual must be instructed by the fundamental objective to restore human dignity of each and every South African," close quote. Let's deliver freedom together to all our people. Let us work towards the dignity for all South Africans. And may we declare, as Madiba asked us to do in 2008, that it's in our hands that no child will die in a pit latrine again. I thank you.
Thanks so much to Mr. Selo Hatang of the Nelson Mandela Foundation. We're going to move swiftly along. I'm going to call upon stage Mr. Bonang Mohale of the Business Leadership South Africa. Please be very brief, Mr. Mohale. Let's hear it for him, ladies and gentlemen.
Eminence, Excellencies, most distinguished guests, Ntate Selo Hatang, I acknowledge the challenge. Ka Sotho ho thu o Selo Hatang hobane o mahata butle o majantja madimo a ja batho ntate nneletse molangwana ke phoke fela tlala ena e sitwa e ntswala ke a itebohela. Today, as Business Leadership South Africa, representing 86 CEOs of major companies, only 53 of them account for 62% of the national GDP. We hang our heads in shame because 24 years into democracy, we should not still be talking about sanitation in our schools. Not only should we treat our children and South Africa's children as our very own, but these are children of our own employees, a crucible from which we are going to derive future employees and the markets of today. Therefore, we acknowledge that we have failed South Africa and in the process failed ourselves. Because in a country where just the financial services has a market value of 5 trillion South African rands, last year SARS collected 1.2 trillion. 57 million South Africans, if you do the math, there is no reason why our schools could not be adequate 24 years into democracy. Africa is not a poor continent. It is just poorly governed. The developed countries are not those where the rich are abdicating their responsibilities and the poor aspire to buy cars. But where those that have purposefully, deliberately, and consciously use public transport because it is accessible and it is safe. We are 1.2 billion people, 54 African countries. We speak 2,000 languages. All our mineral resources are number 2 or number 1 in the world. And yet we're not renowned for producing some of the world's finished goods at a time that the raw material prices are coming down precipitously and beneficiated goods are increasing. We are not known as the world's number 1 chocolate producers, and yet the cocoa that's needed comes from Cote d'Ivoire, and the cotton for our garments come from some of our continents. This is the most under-marketed and mismarketed continent in the world. 1 in 2 people live in China, India, and Africa. 1990, 1992, when our leaders were released from prison, political parties unbanned, and our newspapers liberated, Germany chose that it's going to be a unitary, united, but prosperous Germany. It was the West that was more gifted, the more dominant, that deliberately chose to reach out to the East. And in 20 years, Germany was indeed a unitary, united but prosperous Germany. It was in a shorter time than we have been free. So this new business leadership South Africa commits itself in Tate Hatang to use its voice much more judiciously, to own the strength in our name being called business, to step up to the plate and ensure that we eradicate not only those things that keep us awake at night, but that we focus on education, because when one steadily burns the midnight oil, one gains access to the domain of knowledge and wisdom, the world of meaning, the world that cannot be conquered without a persistent crusade. In conclusion, that is why this new business leadership South Africa supports the two transformative proposed amendments. The proposed amendment on Competitions Commission, the one that speaks about economic concentration, because poverty still has a black face. And that is why as business, we support land expropriation without compensation. Because for us as business, that's not the agenda, but the agenda is land reform. How we can achieve in our lifetime land restitution, land redevelopment, and land redistribution. And it's land redevelopment where we speak about the property rights and security of tenure, where Article 25, 3A says, when the conditions of fair and equitable can be fulfilled, that compensation can be down to zero. That land is not only central to the struggle of African people, but it's the very genesis where our schools are located, where these kids can be properly looked after. So when we live here in Tate Hatang, Limema Motshekga will be marshalling our members. At 1500 hours, we have our board meeting, and we'll be raising this matter sharply to see how we can continue to be not just active citizenry, but to ensure that we take our rightful place alongside civil society to ensure that we banish subjugation, exploitation, and exclusion forever in our lingo and indeed in our diction.
Thank you, Mr. Bonang Mohale of Business Leadership South Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, let me call upon Mr. Sizwe Ngasana, the National Education Collaboration Trust Chairman, on stage, sir.
Thanks very much, Program Director. To the Honorable President, Deputy President, Minister Motshekga, ministers who are here present, deputy ministers, the acting premier, the mayor of Tshwane, the MECs, HODs, DGs, UNICEF leadership, business leadership who's here, and all the representatives of civil society and labor unions. I represent the National Education Collaboration Trust as chairperson, and maybe just to give you a little bit of background, because the NECT is going to be managing this project of SAFE. I think it is important for people to just know a little bit about the NECT. So when the NDP was adopted as the national policy way back in 2012, civil society, business, and labor came together to say, you know, where the NDP calls for active citizenship, how can we play a role in supporting government? And with the leadership of the Minister of Basic Education, Angie Motshekga, the NECT was born in July 2014. It was born in July 2014 to mobilize the private sector, civil society, and labor to work with government to improve the quality of basic education in the country. And I'm really pleased that in a very short space of 4 years, In fact, you know, the CEO of the NECT, Godwin Khoza, always reminds me that it's only 3.5 years, actually, when you look at it. We, through our partner-driven activities, have reached 61.5% of the schooling system in addressing some of the most fundamental challenges in the classroom. And these include making sure that we cover the curriculum. We've developed tools working with the department as well as the provincial departments in making sure that the officials, as well as the schools, from leadership, school management teams, to the teachers, cover the curriculum, you know, that is the CAPS curriculum. And in that 3.5 years, through the interventions of the NECT, we've managed to increase the curriculum coverage by more than 30%. Over 60% of the subject advisors responsible for primary schools have been inducted and trained by the NECT to support teaching and learning in the classroom. The partnership initiative, together with the DBE, is in the process of upgrading the SASAM system. That's the school administration system that's used to manage the 25,000 schools that we have in the country. And that initiative is an initiative in which the provinces are contributing money that is managed by the NECT. The department and the private sector has contributed monies to develop the SASAM system. We've established a project office which manages all these resources and makes sure that the project is delivered below budget and, in fact, within the ambit of what the PFMA provides for. And this is the same model that we're going to use in the NECT to manage SAFE. Because we've established, you know, the protocols that are able to account to all the stakeholders. And just to the point that was made by both Mr. Silo Hatang and Bonang Mohale, we were able to mobilize the resources to achieve efficiency in the delivery so that we don't end up paying for boreholes for like 2 million rand when the boreholes should be costing anywhere between 60 and 80,000 rand per borehole. So this is how we're going to manage the SAFE project. We have created a steering committee which is going to have representatives from UNICEF, from the private sector, from government, as well as the NECT to ensure that there's transparency and efficiency in the process of how the SAFE project itself is going to be managed. So we keep our eye on making sure that at the end of the day, not only are we improving the learning outcomes in the classroom, but that we're providing dignity to our learners and to our children in the country who are, after all, 100% of the future of our country. So we'll provide the mechanisms to receive, administer the funds and monitor, as well as report on the utilization of these resources that are going to be committed to by various people who are going to be making their pledges here today. And I can assure you that working with those stakeholders, including the Nelson Mandela Foundation and UNICEF, that we will make sure that the targets and the objectives that have been set by the President and by the Minister of Basic Education are actually achieved for the benefit of our children. And with us, pledge our support for yet another collaboration that we should fast track and make sure that there's improvement in the future of our children. Thank you.
Right on time, Mr. Gnasana. Thank you so much. Those were the messages of support, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to listen to a quick musical item before we get on to the signing as well as the recognition of the pledges. Let's hear it now from the Fumana Secondary School, who are going to be giving us a musical item.
Rivonia, free operation, my boy. But a little
Department. So please come and acknowledge the pledges. The reason we've been here today, as Mr. Selohatang has put it, it is time to dig deep in our pockets and give, sir. Let's welcome Mr. Invasuti, ladies and gentlemen.
Good morning and goeiemorgen. Well, I think, perhaps we should put our hands together for this brilliant rendition by our learners. They are a prototype of thousands of learners who assemble each year for the National Estate. and the remarkable talent that they unleash and is on display is quite remarkable and incredible. It says a lot about the ability and potential of our learners. Well, let me firstly thank all our sponsors for making themselves available, for being so willing and magnanimous and generous in their commitment to pledge for this incredibly important challenge which would affirm the dignity of our children. And the nature and the scope of this pledge, of this challenge and initiative must be properly understood. So, for example, many are unaware of the fact that not very long ago in the education landscape, we had no grade R in our public schools. In a short space of time, we have more than 900,000 learners in grade R alone. This in itself tells us about the immediate and significant challenge that we face in providing age-appropriate sanitation for our learners. But the challenge does not stop there. Already the National Development Plan has indicated that it is critical that each child in South Africa receives at least 2 years of preschool learning. This would mean, or translate into approximately 2 million children who require age-appropriate sanitation. Now, I want to acknowledge the presence, obviously, of our ministers who are present out here, deputy ministers, our important sponsors and donors, and the education team. They've made themselves available today, and I thank my colleagues for being here, but it's not symbolic. They have planned with us to ensure that collectively and collaboratively we are able to address this challenge. To the extent that as I speak to you today, approximately 1,500 projects are in the process of either planning or actual construction, that we've already delivered approximately 500 sanitation projects. Now, we should be mindful of the fact
the backdrop. Yeah. Okay.
You represent section 27, which is called by what? Yaga Tech, ne? Casey?
It's a law center.
Or law center. Yeah. When are you interested in working?
Here. So we represent the Komape family in
in the court case, the lawsuit, and then how far are you guys appealing?